Hello and welcome. This is Mama Jess. Today I'm going to be making ghee out of a lot of butter that I have that is in the freezer and is taking up too much space. What I love about clarifying butter or making ghee, and they're actually two different things. One is a little more mild and it's not cooked as long as, and the other is browned and caramelized and has a wonderful caramel, kind of a sweet flavor. But the reason I like to do it, there's a few reasons. It clears out freezer space when you just got way too much butter, because we have 2 dairy cows, we have tons of milk. I'm overloaded making cheese and butter and yogurt, and I can't keep up. So it clears out freezer space. And also in the hot summers here, if you leave butter out, it goes bad pretty quickly. So if you clarify it or turn it into ghee, it is shelf stable and it can last a long time, and it can withstand the heat. Also, what I love is that the cultured butter that I make, and I prefer to culture it because it's easier to turn into butter. Sweet cream is really difficult to get it to actually take. It takes a long time for it to turn into butter and buttermilk. But what I love is that it takes what can be sometimes an off kind of cultured flavor that I don't like very much. It turns it into a wonderful flavor. So I don't feel like I've wasted making the product, because the cultured can it's not preferable to me. I don't like the taste, and I don't, it actually becomes intolerable sometimes. I don't like the smell of it. I don't like the taste of it. And I don't want to cook with it because that weird smell and taste is in everything. But if you clarify it, whether clarified butter or cook it a little longer and turn it into a caramelized ghee, it's just a wonderful way to utilize a product that maybe you made it and you're just not thrilled about it. So there's no loss here, and that's what I love. So anyway, I'm going to show you how to do this. And one part about being here with Mama Jess, I don't have a list of activities I'm wanting to teach you. It's just that these are my days. This is my day. I have to empty the freezer. I have to deal with making this. And this is what it would be like just to kick along with a mom. And I know a lot of you never really had a mom that was stable or home or knew how to do anything. Maybe she was a drunk or a drug addict, or maybe she was depressive and wouldn't get out of bed, or maybe she was like a workout queen or a career woman or whatever it is. You didn't get a chance to kick around a mom and just go easy and be peaceful and hang out and learn skills and develop a sense of connection with someone that is not running around crazy, doing too much, or who is a total addict. So that's what I'm doing here. So we're making ghee and we're learning about how to have a relationship, with a maternal voice, someone who cares about you and just really wants you to be skilled, but also be peaceful. Like, we can just simmer down, calm down. The internet is crazy. You can come away feeling like you're mentally ill and that you have to learn so much and do so much and go here and go there and be somebody great and be hot and be skinny and be sexy and be wealthy, whatever. But here with Mama Jess, we're gonna exit that insanity and we're going to just deal with the butter today. All right, here we go. So the first thing, I'm just loading up my pot with some butter. You don't want to overfill it. As it melts down, it's going to reach a certain level. But if it's too high, it can possibly overflow when it's doing its foaming. So you don't want it to be too full. I definitely recommend starting on a lower temperature. You don't want the flame to be too hot. But the thing with this, and the way that I usually teach any kind of cooking, is that I want you to go by your senses. I want you to be looking at it, smelling it, sometimes tasting, sometimes touching. And rather than give you a big recipe, this is a perfect example of how to use all your senses to know when this is ready. There's certain stages you have to watch for, and even when you'll start smelling certain things, especially when you get to the end, you'll start smelling this nice brown flavor. On my stovetop, this is called a power burner, which I think is nuts because this flame would be too high. This is not low enough, but it says low, all right? So I don't want you to be using a flame this high because there is a lot of propensity for it to burn, and you do not want to burn. You want it to be a very slow browning. So I don't even use this burner. So if this is this type of burner you had, I'd say that's not low enough, right? So if you started it on low, it would probably burn. So what I have here is the most mellow flame on my stovetop. It's much more relaxed. So I generally use this if I'm going to be subject to any possibility of burning, especially butter, okay? So right there, it's a matter of going more by your senses. Like, I want you to know, like, look at the flame. Is the flame gonna like torch and blacken what you're doing? Or is it going to slowly melt and come to a place of a nice low simmer? But everybody has their own definitions for what things are as far as what is a simmer or what is a rolling boil. So rather than follow directions exactly, it's way better to follow your senses, right? Your eyes, your ears, your smell, your touch, and your taste. And that's what I find to be the best way to learn all of these more traditional ways of cooking and making sourdough bread and ferments and things, is that you're really looking at it. So try not to be so focused on the exact recipe, but go by what you're looking at, okay? All right, so you can see the melting, and I'm feeling good about how much butter I have in here. It's not gonna be too much. Sometimes if I see that it's very low, I might add a little bit more. Otherwise, I'll leave it at this. So butter consists of milk solids and the oil, the fat in it. And so that is ultimately what we are going to be watching. Our goal here is to get rid of anything in the butter that could possibly spoil if it was left out. And so those milk solids and proteins and the excess water that's still in it, that has to be taken out. And what will be left behind is a pure oil that is shelf stable and that will not go bad so quickly. All right, now, so just want you to take a look at it. You can see now that there's this little bit of foam that's starting. So we've got these two different colors, right? The white, which is more foamy and fluffy, and then the really bright yellow, which is just a very basic oil. No fluffiness, no curdling. And I'm seeing on the edges here, it's starting to bubble a little bit. I might want to check the heat. I definitely don't want this to burn. I want it to go really slow. And if you watch closely, you'll see like these little explosions of bubbles. There'll be larger explosions, and then like on the edge there'll be a little bit of the little bubbles starting to form and develop foam. You want to be careful that you're not running the flame too hot, because you do not want it to get to a big hard rolling boil. You don't want it to be splatting everywhere. You don't want any of the oil to come and drip down the sides of the pot, because that could be a fire hazard. So you definitely want to keep an eye on it. And I usually like to multitask, but when it comes to anything with hot oil, I am much more careful to stay close to it and keep an eye on it. Now notice how the entire surface has become more foamy. Almost the whole thing now is white with these occasional little bursts of the oil underneath. Now it's beginning to move more into, I don't want to call it a big, massive rolling boil, but there's definitely more activity. I'll watch the heat. I might turn it down a little bit, but you want it to be at a pretty good simmer. And now we're going to begin to see the foam increase more and more. And it's the first stage of foam. So some of the things that I'm looking at And I am seeing evaporation happen, so we know that there's moisture coming off in the steam. I'm hearing a certain sound that I want of the simmering. It's not too hard, it's not a big hard boil, but it's also not so low that it's not doing the activity that I want and the separation that I want. I'm also smelling some of that cultured smell that I don't prefer, which I'm happy about, knowing that there's a separation happening and that smell is going to be escaping out of this in the process of separating the milk solids where the culture is and the oil, which when we're done here will be completely purified or clarified, which means it's going to be clear. In the process of the separation, you have some of the white foam that is dropping to the bottom that we cannot see, but I'll be able to show you after. But also it will be forming a little bit on the top as well. And so that's why you'll need to strain it through a fine mesh strainer. And I also use a cheesecloth. So we're now reaching the point where the first foaming has passed and there is still milk solids floating on the top, but they definitely don't have the same kind of foam, fluffy look. They look almost more like curdled milk. And there's also solids on the bottom, but they have not browned yet. So at this point, if you wanted clarified butter, you would turn off the heat and you would filter it through a sieve and layer napkins or layer cheesecloth, and you're going to get this beautiful clarified golden butter, okay? But what I'm going to do is allow it to cook longer and go through a second foaming where the milk solids on the bottom are going to start browning and caramelizing and creating that wonderful kind of sweet caramel flavor of ghee. You will also want to sterilize jars, so that's just boiling them in hot water. And in order to not have the jars on the bottom of the pot where it's really hot, I have laid down 3 of the mason jar rings, which gives a certain degree of separation from the bottom because I don't want them to rattle around and crack. So now we are going into the second round of foaming. I'm seeing lots of little bubbles forming. And again, this is where the browning is happening, the caramelizing, and it's definitely on a low heat. I don't want it to burn, but I do want it to brown. So over the course of time, it starts browning at that low heat. You'll also notice a change in the color. It goes from that bright golden to a slightly darker golden color. I'm definitely smelling that wonderful browned, caramelized smell. And if you run a spoon on the bottom, you can begin to feel the solids that are browning. Like you need those solids on the bottom to brown and give you that flavor you're looking for. Okay, so as soon as I see it's starting to get really big and it's bubbling, see how it's wanting to reach to the top, and this would definitely overflow. I turn off the heat. Woo, we're gonna go over. Just about, whew. Okay, just made it. And now it's going to simmer down, it's gonna calm down, and then I'm gonna strain this off and pour it into my sterilized jars. So you can see now that the foam has subsided, here we have the ghee underneath. And so this foam will be strained out and you'll have that beautiful brown ghee underneath. I love it. So you will want to take a dry towel or a paper towel and dry out any excess moisture that might be in your jars. You don't want any moisture in a jar of anything that you're trying to preserve for a while, because that water will possibly carry bacteria or be the water source for bacteria to grow, and so we don't want that. Okay, so I take a funnel. This is the fine mesh sieve that I use. And then I layer cheesecloth. And this is what it looks like. See just all those tiny little bubbles. Okay. And you can see how it's slightly browned, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. If I just did clarified butter and didn't let it go as long, it would be all that nice, just white milk solids. But because of the browning, which is the caramelizing, giving the flavor of the ghee, it turns brown. You don't want it to overflow, so make sure you have an eye on it underneath. When I clean it, I'm going to use a mixture of white vinegar and baking soda and put it over the flame, and that helps break up some of this chunkier stuff, and then I can clean it with a Brillo pad pretty easily. I wanted to show you that sometimes I take an old credit card and I like to scrape out the heavy solids, because you don't want this stuff going down the drain. Okay, so I'll put that in a compost pile and then proceed to do the vinegar and baking soda mixture to break up the last of it. Okay. So to clean this pot, you can see I put a very little bit of vinegar and baking soda, and it'll do the foaming that it does. But it is picking this up really nicely. So now I can take a scouring pad and I can knock all this down and clean up the pot to do my second batch. So you don't need a lot of vinegar and baking soda, just a little bit. And make sure you use a Brillo pad or something with a really good scouring ability, or else you'll have a lot of frustration trying to get these last little pieces off. Okay, a standard sponge will not work. All right, it's finished. Clarified butter, ghee. You can see the difference in the color. I can put these on my pantry. They will last for a good long while. I don't have to worry about if it's hot in the kitchen, because it don't matter. They're just gonna be there. They can get hot and cold and nothing will affect that they are now stable, and that's a great skill set to have. Before I close, I used to be really almost panicked in wanting to search online and get as many skills as I could get, and what I discovered is that deep down there was a sense of anxiety and like a loneliness and a longing. Even if I was around company and people and activities in the home, there was still this drive in me that was not peaceful. And so I have a heart for you young people in this country, that I know that you're either like manically trying to take on all kinds of things and do as much as you can, or there are those who just want to bury themselves in your bed all day and you don't want to get out and do anything. But that's not the peace that ultimately you need. You don't want to be like high and anxious and running around crazy, and you don't want to be so crushed and, you know, depressed and want to give up. So just know, in the midst of all these skills, my desire more than just giving you this instruction, because most of these videos, I mean, there's so many amazing bloggers. I can't keep up with them. They're just so smart, and great videos, but that's not what I'm doing here. And I'm repeating myself. I've said this in other videos, but it's because that's my ultimate heart for you, is that I want you to be set free from the chaos and this internet. It's just a madness. It's too much. Like, you might feel the pressure to be like a gourmet cook and everything has to be so fancy and tasty. And you might feel a pressure to be this highly skilled homesteader and you know how to do everything, or like a rad musician, or like, you know, going to the gym and getting tight abs or something. I mean, I don't know what your goal is, but my hunch is that if you were to sit still for a few minutes, you're really unhappy and anxious and afraid and down about things. And not everybody, you know, but my hope is those who are coming to this site are those who are just, you feel like you need a mom. You need someone you can sit with in the kitchen and just talk about life and say you're overwhelmed, or learn these skills and feel good and confident in that. But always know that it's super important to have a bond with a human being that cares about you. Preferably a skilled elder who can guide you and lead you and instill skills and wisdom that you need. Because when I watch a lot of these videos online, I just see a lot of really restless people, really kind of manic and crazy, and they're trying to sell you something and they get amped over things and make it a big deal. But I don't want you to get into that hype. I really want you to settle down and be able to be peaceful in your home, you know, tending to the home inside and out, and getting these skills. Of course, that's important. But more so, moving in peace. Not being so spun out like I see people. So yeah, I'm here to teach you how to make clarified butter and ghee and all the other skills. But after all the skills I've gotten, it's not gonna make you happy. I've learned all kinds of things. But there's a need for God. There's a need to find peace with God and with the world as it is, and accept it as it is, and do what you can to change things for the better, but also learn, you know, the wisdom to accept when you can't. That's the serenity prayer, right? So I'm probably going to regularly touch on this message throughout my skill set. So this is definitely not a place if you want to blast through and get a skill, because I'm a mama heart here. I got a mama heart and mind, and I am praying for you, and I care about you, and I have a heart that worries about the kids of this country. I know that's a pretty big burden, but I was given that a long time ago, and I can't shake it. And so I'm kind of making this whole channel up, and I don't know if anybody will ever care about it. You know, maybe I'll max out at 100 subscribers or something, but it doesn't matter, because I'm just doing what I know in my heart is important. And I don't want you to stress out about any skill I'm teaching you. You know, you'll learn these things, but more than anything, I want you to know yourself and know God and know that bond with a loving parent that cares about you and wants to help you through life, so you don't have to do this alone. All right, so get sane, get smart, get skilled, and get serenity. All right, I look forward to talking with you soon.